This is From the Desk with Jada Montemarano. Conversations with the innovators, leaders, and experts who are shaping the future of human resources through cutting-edge technology. Only on the Purple Acorn Network.
Welcome to From the Desk with Jada Montemarano, the podcast where we explore the world of HR. We discuss trends, hot topics, and dive into the tools that help organizations improve how they attract, retain, and support their people, while also sharing how job seekers can land the perfect role during this tumultuous time. So grab your coffee and let's get into it. This is From the Desk with me, Jada Montemarano, where we bring the hottest HR news from the desk right to you. And today we are joined by Demario Bell, an award-winning community builder and founder of Gatherful, who's passionate about creating spaces where people truly feel seen and heard. Demario has built global communities that connected over 100,000 HR leaders and 200,000 members in meaningful ways. He's also recognized as LinkedIn's top community voice and a CMX award winner for B2B community excellence. Demario's knowledge will show us how to create a true community and have connections. Thank you so much for being with us today, Demario.
Thank you, Jada. I'm so happy to be here with you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. So we're going to start off easy, simple, something you should know and love. What is a community manager and why is this role so important?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And the role looks differently at every company, but at its heart, Jada, the role of a community manager is to connect customers with an organization's brand. We're the conduit, we're the voice of the customer, we're that person that makes our customers better users of our products, but also that feel more that emotional connection to our brand. But it looks differently at every company, but at the heart, we are that conduit between a business and their customers.
And how do you create that community between the brand and the customer, especially now during a time where there's a lot of big business, a lot of changes going on, and a lot of people don't seem to be loving a lot of businesses' messages these days. So how do you kind of create that community?
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to tell you what I do because I think that I do it a little bit differently than some people. But for me, to be honest with you, Jada, it's all about authenticity. And I know we throw that word around, authenticity, yes, but sometimes authenticity can be weaponized. What I mean about authenticity for me is I believe in building community with people and not for them. So bringing them on that journey, and I have a design thinking background, so always designing something with the end user in mind. So when you talk about, like how do you bring customers on that journey, as well, what's the act of building community? It's really driving value before you want to get. So for me, tapping into how can I, amplify your voice? What is it that you're looking to get out of it? Or what can we do to make your world, of work 10% better? And that's where I feel where my work begins, also at the intersection of where the organization is trying to go as well. But really at the heart of it is building community with people because they'll tell you what they want.
That seems like it should be a no-brainer, right? Listen to what the people want. That's how it should be. And in your work at Gatherful, I know you're working on that as well, building those communities. So can you explain exactly what Gatherful is in that community building, community manager life that you're talking about?
Yeah, so Jada, I spent over 10 years in-house as a community manager at several companies, tech, HR, nonprofit, higher education, helping them think through like, how do we leverage our most important asset? And I don't like to refer to people as assets, but for the nature of this conversation, how do we leverage the power of people? And I had this moment at the end of 2024 where I was like, what if I can do this at scale? For myself. And it was really my community, my friends who also compelled me to do it because solopreneurship, founding my own business was never on my bingo card. But really my community was the ones who galvanized me. So what we do at Gatherful is that we work with organizations to build internal and external community. So for companies who are looking to lower the cost of new customer acquisition, to increase product adoption, to increase customer loyalty, satisfaction, we work with them to develop voice of the customer programs that help create that emotional connection. On the inside, for the internal community, it's all things that I love, which is I equally love external and internal, which is employee experience. So how do we focus on both growth and culture at an organization? So oftentimes we see jaded organizations look at culture, employee experience, and growth as competing with one another. And I don't believe that's true. I think many organizations just have the calculus wrong. Many organizations are like, well, if we achieve growth, then we can focus on culture. And I think it's the inverse. I think if you invest in culture, then ultimately you're going to get the growth because Jada, if there's a company that you feel compelled to and that they're investing in you, and we can talk about like what investment mean, but if you know that a company truly wants to see you win and they're creating pathways for you to win, you inherently want to give 150% because you see them investing more into you. So we at Gatherful, we also work with companies that think through what are some of those tactics that you can deploy to help increase internal community. Because at the end of the day, Jada, your employees should be your advocates. They should be the ones who are helping with your employer brand.
Yeah, there's a lot that you mentioned there that is spurring a lot of questions. So I'll kind of just go in order for, in general, we're talking about the word community a lot, and everybody knows what a community is. But can
Yeah.
you explain it further of how you create communities or what a successful community is specifically in this business standpoint? And then I feel like that'll help
Sure.
answer and ask some of my other questions that I've got going on.
Well, let me give you an example, a perfect example. So, at my previous company, I worked for the HR software company, Australian founded, named CultureAmp, with 8 global offices. And Jada, my role was senior community manager, so I was responsible for leading our 100,000 member HR community. And so at CultureAmp, community lived in all places. It was truly the first company where community was in the DNA of the company. But how we define community at CultureAmp, it was where our customers can come, and our customers were HR leaders, where they can come to get support, edification, and share best practices about the future of work. So my role was we had a digital forum, our People Geek Slack community, which was the main space where our HR leaders connected with each other. My role was to think about that experience. How do they enter that front door? How do they connect with one another? What does moderation look like? What does peer to peer support look like? Webinars, meetups, you name it. That's what we were doing in our community to make it feel more like this place where people can come and get what they want. We were, I would say, like the go to for HR best practices and not just some forum where people came to for questions. And one of the things that I wanted our community to be is this place where people know they were safe, where they knew that there was no, there was no dumb question, there was no elementary question. All questions were valuable because we were a learning community. The second piece of that is, I would say, being a place and that go-to source of truth for HR leaders. And so my role as the strategic leader was thinking through is like, what value do we want our community to serve? And then what does those tactics look like? And then on the business side, it was going back to the business and showcasing how our community was impacting lead generation, demand generation, word of mouth, brand reach, customer advocacy. So tying that back to some of our business goals as well.
So there is a community that you're explaining within a company and its employees, but also the community between the business and their customers, right? So
Correct.
how do you, I guess, differentiate those communities, create those communities separately or
Yeah.
together?
Yeah, so I think at a number of companies that I've seen, Jada, internal and external community often sits on two different teams. Now, I've certainly worked with internal communities before, and the reason why Gatherful in particular, we focus on both is because both are my passion. But external, internal communities, which to break this down for our listeners to understand, they're more external is more called like customer communities. They typically sit within your go-to-market function. So customer success, sales, or product because they're impacting some of those revenue goals. On the internal community side, typically HR or learning and development will own the internal community. And where the two intersect, or where I've seen, is when you're leveraging people from your community to come and do workshops, webinars, or co-collaborations together with the internal community. Both are powerful drivers because ultimately you want to leverage the power of people to evangelize for your brand.
And you mentioned earlier with those internal communities, creating that culture, creating the business that wants to invest, you mentioned, in their employees. So, in that investment, it got me thinking of mentorship, leadership, education within companies. I feel like back in the day, that used to be really important. You would start at a company and usually work there your whole career, work your way
Yeah.
up. You would have that mentor. So, I guess my question is, how can companies continue to invest with mentorship, or is it kind of gone away because of this? A lot of remote working, you're not in person anymore, you can't just go to your boss's desk and say, hey, like, can I
Yeah.
pick your brain for a second? So I know I threw a lot there at you, but I know you
No,
wanted to talk about investment as well.
no, Jada, that's a really important question. And I think it's more than one thing, to be quite honest with you. I think now this global marketplace is becoming, more competitive. And really, with the advent of HR, a number of companies, not the advent of HR, the advent of AI, please forgive me, with the advent of AI, a number of companies are thinking about like, how do we evolve? And I mean, let me just take a step back. I mean, like, there's a lot that's happening in the market right now, in addition to AI. Jada, you have mass layoffs that are happening. You have attacks on DEI that are happening. You have people within organizations that don't have the upward mobility or the mobility that they once had. You have what's happening in the macro environment that are influencing. So with all this going on in the world, and companies, and there's more competition, companies are focused on like, how do I have a sustainable business within the next couple of years? And so when you think about all the competing priorities, and listen, and I'm not advocating for one side or the other here, but I'm putting on my commercial acumen. So at the executive level, leaders are thinking about like, what are the things that are going to really move the ball down the field? And they're looking at what they would say, like those hard metrics. Like, we got to focus on sales. We have to double down on go to market. But what companies, they fail to realize, to your point, mentorship in the workplace is very important. Mentorship and sponsorship, they're very important in the employee experience. The reason why mentorship is important is because we just know, just based on the data, that underrepresented groups, and when I say underrepresented groups, I'm thinking of anyone who's not a straight white male, in the workplace, we have to jump through hurdles, Jada, to get these advancement opportunities. So when you think about like social currency in the workplace, the idea of mentorship is having someone who has some social currency who can expand some of that on you so that it opens up doors for you. I told people, when nirvana happens, it's when someone comes to you and say, what, Demario, I'm going to make it happen for you today. And so those programs are really important because it really helps us achieve true equity in the workplace. But companies right now, with so many competing priorities, they're looking at these as, how do we give, our employees, the, not going to say the chance, but like they want to like pass that off to employees to manage, and they become these volunteer opportunities. And I challenge that, because you wouldn't hand off your sales roadmap to an employee to handle in a volunteer capacity. And so I say that to say that, not to become loquacious, I think there's just so many competing priorities that organizations are having to juggle right now. And they are giving things to employees that really should be at the executive level, because, yes, there are some things that are the long game. And employee experience is the long game. You will have indicators along the way that you're moving the needle, but you'll never get to this destination where you feel like you've arrived. Like with sales, we have to hit $10 million this quarter. At the end of the quarter, whether or not you hit that or not, so.
And with all of this going on in the world, as you mentioned, a lot of these companies and businesses, as we're seeing, they're making that experience go to the wayside. They're not really focusing on retaining or making their employees feel comfortable, connected, creating that community. So, I guess, what tips would you give if companies or businesses want to do this? Maybe they're stretched thin. Are there easy ways to create that community and connection without maybe needing all of that extra bandwidth?
Yeah, so my
Yes, you know.
that's a big question, Jada. And I'm trying. Let me say this. Let me answer that from the employee perspective, and I'm going to be a little bit raw when I say this part. I think some of the companies, Jada, who have like cut back on their employee experience, they've been intentional about that. So it's been by design. What I will say to those who are watching, who are what I call worker bees like myself, is find those communities outside of work and find those communities where it can sustain you. You can even find those communities within your current workplace, micro communities, which are really, really important right now. And what I mean by micro communities, really small groups of coworkers who you trust, the people who you text, whoever is in that group text that you have. When you talk about all things work, we all have that group text. That's your micro community. So hold on to that and let that get you through. I think what employees have to do is reinterrogate their relationship with work. And I think now, Jada, we're in a space where work is just work. I hate that we're in that spot, but that's just the reality of the place that we're in. So what do I say to organizations who want to do this? Put a strategy behind it. Put headcount behind it. Put intentionality behind it. Just how you do your go-to-market strategy, put the same resources behind it. That's what I would say to you. We don't have to overthink it. A company tells you what's important to them based on where it falls within their strategy and based on where they put their money is. So that's what I would say to them. I mean, many of them know that this is important. It's just a matter of just actually doing it. I will say there are companies, Jada, who truly want to invest in employee experience, who really do and who don't have the resources. But those are smaller companies. And for companies who are looking to do that, there are a ton of great consultants who can come in, who have accessible fees, Jada, who can come in and really help take it from 0 to 1. The reason why I don't say create another committee, because employees already have a lot on their plate and it's not an equal exchange in value. So hire a consultant to come in to be able to help you do some of that building.
Especially with the work from home jobs now, right? That's even harder to create that community and connection. So how are you guys at Gatherful
Yes.
helping the work from home
Yes.
situation?
Yeah, so what I love about the virtual space is that really, Jada, allows us to be more connected than ever. So I've worked at global companies in the past, and let's just say pre-COVID, I don't know how many of us would really have the real opportunity to connect with our peers across the pond. And so at Gatherful, what we've been able to help organizations do is really connect each other across the geo map. So some of the things that we've been coming in and helping organizations think about are we've been hosting virtual happy hours. And so what that looks like coming in, hosting like game night, like trivia or Jeopardy, which has been really insightful. Also coming in and having workshops on particular subject matters. We just did a workshop with a company who were all virtual. It was the first time half of them had met each other. And we did a workshop on intergenerational communication and collaboration. We have now, Jada, 6 generations in the workplace, more than we've ever had. And so now the workplace is looking differently. So we come in and help think through like, how do you build internal community across generations? What does reverse mentorship look like? The other piece is coming in and doing, we do a ton of webinars on different subject matters. And the other place is we work a lot with their ERGs as well to develop some of these community-led initiatives as well. So it's not always top down, but really enabling them to be able to do some of this themselves.
And you mentioned earlier, you touched on the underrepresented groups in the workplace, how we often have it a little bit harder. So, how can companies make space for diverse voices to be heard? And then on the other side, how can we have our voices be heard
Yeah.
without feeling like you're overstepping or getting in the way as they tell you just keep your head down, do the work. You don't want to be too pretentious or anything like that. So, how do you find that balance from the company side and the employee side?
So from the employee side, I tell people, and I was just talking to a friend about this, Jada, you find your voice by using your voice. And I tell people the more that you use your voice, the more that you will find it. Yes, based on who you are, the identities in which you hold, it creates a target for you. But I tell people, for me, as a black straight male in corporate America, how I was able to find my voice and to test how far I can go was by just doing a little bit by little bit and pushing by pushing. And the reality is, Jada, I am who I am. And I let companies know this is what you get, And so if this ain't what you want, then you don't have to take it. But I always have inclusion in mind. So when I say this is what you get, it's not to say I'm off putting, but I show up in the fullness in who I am. And because I show up in the fullness of who I am, it allows me to do my best work at the same time. So for companies, when you ask how can they amplify underrepresented voices, think about a good friend of mine, Torin Ellis. I'm taking this from him because it's so true. It's a very simple. It's simple, so our audience can understand. When decisions are being made, Jada, think about who's not in the room and who should be in the room while we're making this decision. Simple as that. Now, I know that there are certain times where we have to make fast decisions. That's just the world in which we live in. But if we're constantly having to make fast decisions and if everything is important, then nothing is important. So I often think about when I'm making a big decision, who should be in on this decision making before we make it? So that's how you get more diverse voices into the room. And we can get down to a lot of practical detail from performance management. So when you think about let me just say this, why are all the people of color on pips in the workplace? Let's have a conversation around that. Why are all women or people of color in entry level roles? Let's have a conversation around that. So when you think about like what can organizations do, let's think about your operations and are they equitable by design? And if not, then we got to have a whole conversation on like how do we tear that down and rebuild that so that it is getting more to parity.
Well, you already gave an amazing piece of advice, but I love to end my show with some advice for the job seekers out there. We've been
Yeah.
talking a lot about the changing workplace, trying to find a job. Everything is a little bit of a mess right now, but we're going to tailor this question a little bit to you as well. So,
Yeah.
when job seekers are looking for a job, let's pretend it's not difficult to find one right now. But if a job seeker can be a little picky, how can you find the community that is right for them when looking for a job? I know you kind of said, this is who I am, take it or leave it. Is that the kind of opportunity that people should be giving, or what should people be looking for to find that right community?
I think people have to be who they are. And that works for me. So I love how you frame that question because it's a great way to frame the question. I look at it in the terms of when I'm making new friends or when I'm dating. Let me just be honest with you. What are your list of non-negotiables? Which are your core values? So if we are in a candidates market right now, I would say to job seekers is know what your non-negotiables are and don't venture off from that. Because at the end of the day, I'm gonna go back to what I said. If a company truly values you and they truly want you, they'll take the fullness in who you are. I would also say that Jada, we are all talented and skilled. That's me being an optimist. I would say that. But Jada, we also live in a world where skill alone is not going to get us to our destinations of joy and purpose. And so I tell people when you step into a room, and this has worked for me, when you step into a room, own it. Bring your confidence out and let people see who you are as an individual, as Jada, as Demario, because they're going to meet a ton, hundreds, thousands of candidates with your same resume. And now with AI, everybody has the same resume, so it's like, how do they see a little bit of who you are beyond the work? So that's what I would say to job seekers. Distinguish yourself beyond the resume because the resume is not who you are. The resume just shows that you can do the job, but who are you really that will differentiate you from the thousands of people who's going to apply to that job?
That's what I love. That's what I live for. Confidence is key. Confidence, not cockiness. Okay.
Right, right.
Well, thank you so much, Demario, for joining us today. It was great to have you.
Likewise, thank you, Jada.
And thank you all out there for joining us as well. You can catch us every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And if you're hungry for other Purple Acorn shows, you can head to purpleacornnetwork.com and Purple Acorn on LinkedIn. I'll see you next time on From the Desk with me, Jada Montemarano.